Best practices for writing clean and readable Python code. Writing clean and readable code is essential for maintaining and updating your Python projects. It makes it easier for others to understand and collaborate on your code. There are several best practices for writing clean and readable Python code. One important best practice is to use meaningful and clear variable and function names. This helps to make the code self-explanatory and easy to understand. Avoid using abbreviations or single-letter variable names unless they are commonly accepted and well-known. Another best practice is to use proper indentation and white space. Indentation helps to indicate the structure of the code, making it easy to see where loops and conditional statements begin and end. Using appropriate white space can also help to make the code more readable by separating different parts of the code. It's also important to use comments and docstrings to explain the purpose of your code. Comments and docstrings provide valuable information about the code, making it easy for others to understand what it does. Another best practice is to use consistent code style. This means using the same conventions for things like indentation, white space, and naming variables and functions. This can be achieved by using a linter tool and following a style guide such as PEP8. It's also important to use functions and classes to organize your code. This makes it easier to read and understand by breaking it up into smaller and more manageable chunks. In summary, writing clean and readable Python code involves using meaningful and clear variable and function names, proper indentation and white space, comments and docstrings, consistent code style, and using functions and classes to organize the code. Following these best practices can make it easier to understand, maintain and collaborate on your code. Another best practice is to keep your functions and methods short and to the point. Write clean readable code. Each function should have a single, well-defined purpose and should not be longer than a few lines of code. Unfired employee. This makes it easier to understand what each function does and how it relates to the rest of the code. Another important best practice is to avoid using global variables whenever possible. Global variables can make code harder to understand and test, and can lead to unexpected bugs. Instead, use local variables and pass data between functions through function arguments. It's also important to use proper error handling in your code. This means using try-except blocks to handle exceptions and returning appropriate error messages. This can help to make your code more robust and less likely to crash when unexpected errors occur. It's also important to avoid using magic numbers in your code. Magic numbers are hard-coded values that have no explanation or context. Instead, use named constants or variables to make the code more readable and maintainable. Using version control system, VCS, such as Git is also a best practice for keeping the code clean and readable. VCS allows you to keep track of the changes made to the code and collaborate with other developers. In summary, writing clean and readable Python code also involves keeping functions and methods short, avoiding global variables, using proper error handling, avoiding magic numbers, and using VCS to keep track of changes and collaborate with other developers. Following these best practices can make it easier to understand, maintain and collaborate on your code.